could have been a CIA conspiracy to remove you from office?
I don't know. I know many people think so. I've found it difficult to understand why the CIA, which apparently had advanced knowledge of the break-in, didn't inform me. How it could have been that at least two of those involved had CIA connections. I must say, too, the CIA had motive.
So very early in childhood in this country, we're all conditioned to believe that Richard Nixon was a terrible president, right? Resigning from office after the 1972 Watergate scandal when 5 men were arrested for breaking into the DNC headquarters at the Watergate Hotel in D.C. Nixon was actually a brilliant and effective president. Resigning, though, in disgrace 2 years after winning re-election, conservatives recognize he was likely one of the best presidents this country had ever had. Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon, and then the former president was placed under oath and interviewed by 8 members of the Watergate Special Prosecution Force. Our own James Rosen has a new op-ed in the New York Times that extensively details 7 pages of that transcript that had been hidden from all of us for more than 50 years from that interview that have all now been revealed. The story verifies the existence of a deep state, even back then in the 1970s, which operated above the will of the American people, not beholden to their vote, working against Richard Nixon. These 7 pages reveal the Joint Chiefs of Staff was spying on the Nixon White House via a mole named Radford placed at the National Security Council, and Nixon's desire to ending the Vietnam War, which was not popular at all within that deep state. Rosen writes on the similarities between Nixon and Trump. Both men at once craving and scorning the approval of the elites remained resentful of the establishment that they came to lead. The similarities between a president from more than 50 years ago and the one we have right now. The deep state hated Richard Nixon. We all know they hate Donald Trump. You start to now question everything, even the real truth behind the break-in at the Watergate Hotel that ended Nixon's presidency. Who better to talk about this than our friend Roger Stone, who was the youngest staff member in Nixon's 1972 re-election campaign. He was then known as Nixon's man in Washington for years after Nixon left office. Roger has a pretty big tattoo of President Nixon's face right in the middle of his back. Did you know that? Roger Stone, also a longtime advisor to President Trump, joins us now. And, sir, it's good to have you here. Incredible new information in those 7 pages. To those of us that aren't experts on this like you are, can you explain what's revealed here?
Well, this is actually the second time James Rosen pointed out of breaking news. Roughly 18 months ago, perhaps a little longer, newly declassified documents proved without any question that the CIA knew in advance about the break-in at the Watergate Hotel. In fact, of the 8 burglars, 4 of them were still actively on the payroll of the CIA and reporting to their handlers. James McCord, who ran the operation, was a veteran CIA man, as was, of course, E. Howard Hunt. Now, Senator Howard Baker, the Republican on the Senate Watergate Committee, knew of the CIA involvement, but he was not even allowed to mount it in the minority report. Fred Thompson, later a senator, then counsel to the committee, later a senator from Tennessee, he also knew of the CIA's involvement. But Senator Sam Ervin would never allow it to be in the Senate documents. And then the Watergate special prosecutor, Nick Ackerman, was briefed about the CIA's involvement. Yeah. He, too, did nothing. So, and now we find, once again, the same people spying against the president. Their opposition to Nixon was simple. They didn't want to end the war in Vietnam. They didn't want a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets. They didn't want any opening to China, even though at that time, China was a dirt poor, agrarian, unmilitarized, backwards society where few people had running water or electricity.
Do you think that they killed JFK and then got Nixon tossed out of office for the same reason? Do you think that is that your theory?
That is very much my theory. If you look at Nixon's own diaries and those of his aides, as soon as Nixon became president, he began demanding that the CIA hand over all the files on the Kennedy assassination. And Richard Helms, the CIA director, just flatly refused. Yeah. There's a tape in which he has a showdown, a shouting match with the director of the CIA, and he says, "Look, I know who shot John. It's Tucker talked about it. I published a Substack piece on it. It's one of the the Nixon tapes they never play.
Who is the person?
Who is the person in what sense?
Well, who do you, I guess, I understand that you were once told by Nixon that he knows who killed JFK. Let's start there.
Put it that way. So I think basically they took Nixon down for the same reason they took Kennedy down. And that was because they were for peace. I had one conversation with Nixon over drinks when I said to him, who really killed Kennedy? And he said, well, let me put it this way. Lyndon and I both wanted to be president, but I wouldn't kill for it, which is the thesis of my theory, which is he is the driving force that involves the CIA, the mob, big banks, a number of other entities, big Texas Oil, certainly, in the murder of JFK. He has motive, means, and an opportunity. But I don't allege that he did it alone. He does it because he's the head of the deep state. As the chairman, as the Senate majority leader, he takes the rare step of appointing himself to the subcommittee on appropriations for defense, where he quadruples the CIA's secret budget, and he doubles the budget of his next door neighbor, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Lyndon Johnson was the ultimate power operator.
This is fascinating stuff that's come out. Does this revelation change anything? My final question, and what's your advice to Donald Trump as he continues to deal with this same deep state decades later?
I think they spied on Trump for the same reason they spied on Nixon. I mean, in this case, the Joint Chiefs of Staff had a man inside the White House in the military office, a liaison office, snapshotting files, going through burn bags, going through briefcases, any kind of information, through two admirals all the way to the head of the Joint Chiefs. That is highly illegal. Some could argue treasonous. In the case of Nixon, as I said, it was because of his efforts towards détente and peace rather than war. It's the same reason they oppose Trump. Trump is not for endless foreign war. Trump uses American power sparingly but very surgically, as he did in Iran, taking out their nuclear weapons, as he did in Venezuela. No long, prolonged boots on the ground, no thousands of American casualties, no billions of dollars for defense contractors. Right. This is why they hate him.
I really only have 10 seconds, but I just want to get an answer from you on this. Why is the deep state, why is the CIA so invested in keeping us in wars? What is the benefit in their opinion? Because
war is extraordinarily profitable. Because the defense contractors make millions, and then they give grants to the think tanks. You see how this works?
That's so hideous. That's the worst answer, and it probably means it's the true one too. Roger Stone, thanks for breaking it all down for us. Incredible stuff. Thank you.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
Good to see you. You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.